In the late 18th century, a girl named Sara Baartman was born into the Khoikhoi tribe in the Cape Colony, present-day South Africa. The Khoikhoi, indigenous to this region, were known for their distinct physical attributes. Sara, too, inherited these unique features, particularly her large buttocks and elongated labia, which were characteristic of Khoikhoi women. Life was simple and serene until a fateful encounter in the early 19th century. A British ship surgeon named William Dunlop and a showman, Hendrik Caesar, came across Sara. Intrigued by her physical features, they saw an opportunity to exploit her uniqueness for their gain. With promises of wealth and fame, they persuaded Sara to travel with them to Europe. Little did she know, this journey would take her far away from the familiarity of her homeland and thrust her into the heart of European exploitation. This marked the beginning of Sara's tragic journey from her homeland to the heart of European exploitation. In Europe, Sara Baartman became a spectacle, a curiosity to be gawked at, known by the derogatory term Hottentot Venus. The heart of London and Paris became her stage, her body the main attraction. She was put on display, paraded around like an exhibit in a circus sideshow. The spectators, hungry for the exotic and unfamiliar, paid to see her. They pointed, they stared, they laughed, and they marveled, their eyes feasting on her distinctive physical features, particularly her large buttocks and elongated labia, traits associated with her Khoikhoi heritage. Her shows were not just degrading, they were sensationalized. The promoters painted her as a supposed link between humans and animals, a living specimen of primitive life, a concept that fed into the racial prejudices and colonial ideologies of the time. This was more than just a spectacle, it was a tool of racism and colonial exploitation. The exploitation of Sara Baartman was not limited to her life. Even in death, she was denied dignity. Her body was dissected, her remains preserved and displayed like a museum artifact in Paris. Her brain, her genitalia, all stripped of their humanity and presented as objects of curiosity. Yet, amidst the glaring lights and the hushed whispers of the crowd, stood a woman who, despite her circumstances, survived. A woman who, despite the dehumanizing spectacle, remained human. Sara Baartman was not just the Hottentot Venus, she was a Khoikhoi woman, torn from her home, exploited, and paraded for the amusement of others. For 5 long years, Sara Baartman lived in this dehumanizing spectacle, her very existence reduced to an object of amusement. But remember her not for the spectacle she was made into, but for the woman she was, a woman who endured, a woman who survived, a symbol of resilience in the face of exploitation and racism. In 1815, Sara Baartman's life was tragically cut short at around the age of 25, likely due to complications related to pneumonia. This abrupt end to her life, however, was not the end of her story. Posthumously, she continued to be objectified and exploited, her body dissected and her remains, including her brain and genitalia, put on display in a Paris museum. Even in death, she was denied the dignity and respect that had been so cruelly stripped from her in life. Yet as the years passed, a new narrative began to emerge. Sara Baartman's story began to be recast, not as a curiosity or a spectacle, but as a poignant symbol of colonial and racial exploitation. As we moved into the late 20th century, a renewed understanding of her life and the injustices she suffered began to take shape. Her story caught the attention of the world, sparking conversations about the lingering effects of colonialism and racism. Advocates from South Africa and around the globe rallied for her dignity to be restored. They called for her remains to be returned to her homeland, a final act of respect and acknowledgement of the wrongs she had suffered. In 2002, after years of advocacy and negotiation, their calls were finally answered. Sara Baartman's remains were repatriated to South Africa, a request made by none other than Nelson Mandela himself. She was finally laid to rest in the Eastern Cape, a symbolic journey home that brought some closure to a tragic chapter in history. Sara Baartman's story serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty, but also of our capacity for change, respect, and reconciliation. Her legacy lives on, not as the Hottentot Venus, but as a symbol of resilience, dignity, and the ongoing fight against racial exploitation. And so we remember Sara Baartman, a woman whose life was marked by hardship, but whose story continues to inspire and challenge us.